The topic of today's sermon is sewage from the sky, and I'm going to start with a confession of sin and a lament. I heard somebody say this last week that 2/3 of the Psalms are laments, and meaning they're songs of sorrow or songs of despair, and there's some harsh stuff in there. You know, God, why have you left me for my enemies to overtake me type stuff. And I talked to some friends about whether to do this or not, because the 3rd-year anniversary is supposed to be like cheerleading, rah stuff. I'm like, yeah, here we go, we're going great, we're going to keep going great. And it feels like that's my job, but I'm just going to be straightforward and honest and say that's not where I feel like I've been. And so I decided to err on the side of transparency. If we're anything, we're transparent here, as the video clip may show. We're willing to talk about the dark side of life and difficult questions and that sort of thing. But I'm going to be, and I promise there's some hoorah stuff in the message, but I want to talk about where I've been this last year. And what you see on the screen pretty much sums up how I've felt. Some of you know, my friends know this, and as a pastor, you kind of feel like you have to work through it. But I was physically ill from pretty much October through the end of January or February last year. And some of you could probably suspect it because you hear me snorting and snotting all the time, and you know that allergies and cold and sinus. And I just felt miserable, just absolutely miserable. And then the daily grind of doing church and having a family with 3 kids and so forth, life was just really challenging. And then I got better for about 2 months, and then my kids got sick. So it started with one of my kids, and then it caught on with another, and then the other child got sick at the same time I got sick, and then after we got better, my wife got sick. And about that time, my wife got pregnant, and so on top of her sickness, she got really, really intense morning sickness, like awful for 2 months. And so life was beyond challenging at that point. There were days when I woke up in the morning and thought, oh no, I'm awake. I'm just being transparent. I woke up thinking, oh no, it's starting again. And, trying to raise 3 kids and pastor a church with everybody, the house feeling like some kind of asylum or sick place that you go in where nobody wants to touch anything and you feel like you have to sanitize everything was hard. But then I want to see Daylight Church grow. And this is embarrassing to talk about, and this is where the confession of my sin comes in. So this is a database that I keep on my church on my phone or my cloud of attendance at Daylight. And I don't know if you guys probably can't see those numbers back there, but at the top of it is the beginning of 2017. And last year about this time, we were averaging about 115 people at Daylight. And we went to 10 o'clock services, and we kicked off the year with a series called Resolutions that started with physical health. And it just felt like we were booming and we had momentum. And so we went from 108 on the last year, the last day of 2016, up to 121, 142, 108, 134, 140. There's a 160 in there, 140, 156. And it just felt like, man, we've got, just charge. The bugle horns were shouting, and we were moving forward, and we had momentum. And this has nothing to do with us doing this, but Kara and I left on a vacation. We take a big trip every 5 years. And the first week that we were on that vacation, the attendance was 93. So we dropped from about 130 to 93. And part of me wants to say, well, that's because I wasn't there, But that just continued, and you'll see other numbers on here. It's from 92, 103. We still had 144 in there. 94 on Father's Day, 102 on 4th of July, 97, 93 recently. And it's hard for a pastor not to take that personally. And I promise, this is not a beat up on the church day. This is a beat up on me day, okay? So don't start to feel that way, like, why ain't you guys in church? That's not what I'm talking about. You guys are here, and I'm thankful for it. What I'm saying, so there's this feel or vibe among church planners, and I've heard it referred to as some words that I'm not allowed to say in a family-friendly context, or that I wouldn't say anyway, actually. But we're going to call it the kick butt factor, okay? And it's not even what you think it would be. But there's the church planters kick butt factor, and the church planters kick butt factor is this combination of attendance and the rise in attendance based on a short duration of time. So if you plant a church and in year 1 you have 100 people showing up, you're kicking butt. That's considered being pretty successful, because if you get to the end of a year with 100 people in attendance, your odds of survival increase to about 90%. Those are just the statistics. So 100 is the benchmark. That's what you're shooting for. And then if you can grow, so a church that would grow to 300 in 3 years would be a serious kick butt church planting pastor. A church that stays at 100, they're not kicking butt so much. If it takes them 20 years to get to 200, they're not kicking butt so much, okay? So as a church planter, so if somebody asks me, what do you do? That's the first thing that comes to my mind is I planted a church. I started a church. And there's something about a man's identity wrapped up in his occupation. So when the church is, I'm just trying to be straight here about me and what I've dealt with. So when the church is booming and we go from 108 to 120 to 160, man, on those days I come home, Kara's like, how do you think it went? I'm like, man, life is so great. It's just incredible. It's unbelievable what God's doing. And then when we hit 92, 93, and I come home, she said, how do you think it went? And I'm just like, why do I keep doing this? Why do I do this to myself? And remember, during this whole time, I'm sick. I'm just physically feeling awful. And my entire family is sick for months, and it feels like it's not going away. And I reached this kind of breaking point, and I had a meeting with my board. I said, guys, why do we keep doing this? Like, I asked that question, why keep doing this? Why do it to myself? Why stress myself out? Why, surely stress complicates health. There's 1,000 great churches in Louisville. Why do daylight? I asked that question in all honesty recently to both my staff, I talked about it, my board members, and my mentor or my coach. I went to them and said, why keep doing this? And I've dreamed about the 9 to 5, dreamed about the times when you don't have to think about your job all the time. And so there it is, it's out there. And I recognized that I had made an idol out of these numbers. But it all came to a head about probably a month ago. It was the preseason of the NFL, so I don't know how many weeks ago that was, but it was pretty much week 3. And if you're an NFL guy at all, week 3 of the preseason is when you get to watch your team actually play. So it's like the kickoff to the NFL in a sense. So I had ordered my pizza and wings. I had the game on. I don't even remember who was playing, but it was week 3 of the NFL. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I've got something to be excited about. When I hear liquid flowing in our utility room, just splashing. It sounds like it's raining in our utility room. And let me back up a few days. So my very pregnant wife has this heightened sense of smell. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, those of you that have been pregnant, but she can smell the flies out by the pond. I mean, she is, in tune with the universe where her sense of smell is concerned. And she woke up early in her pregnancy and said, our bathroom smells musty. I thought, oh, crap, that's not good. She said, it stinks and I can't handle it. And I thought, well, we'll just get through the first trimester and then it'll go away. And every day, 2 or 3 times a day, she's like, I can't handle the smell in there. She wakes up from bed and she's like, and she can smell this mustiness. And there's this little patch of like mildew mold that's grown on the corner of our tub. And I'm telling you, it's like this big. But boy, she could be in Detroit and smell this patch of musk or whatever it is, right? So I think, okay, fine. Happy wife, happy life, right? So I go in and I gut the bathroom. I tear it down to the studs because I'm going to rebuild it. And part of that is tearing out the plumbing. You see where I'm going with this. So the plumbing underneath the tub is different than the plumbing when you install a walk-in shower, which is what we're doing. There's a P-trap, and so I went in and I cut off that P-trap, and it was elevated, and it's a drain. It's a low-pressure drain, so I thought no big deal. So I just made sure it stayed elevated, and I walked away. Well, a few days later, I'm down eating my pizza and wings, ready for the kickoff of the NFL when it starts raining in our utility room. And I go in, and what has happened is every time that a toilet has been flushed in our the upstairs of our homes, it has gathered in this little crawl space underneath our bathtub. Somehow it backed up where that P-trap used to be and flowed out into this space and had finally filled up the light fixture. So we had this globe light. Yeah, you see why the RV clip is appropriate, right? So there's this globe light fixture that is overflowing with sewage that has been accumulating for a few days. And I thought, well, ain't that just grand? I mean, it's like, thanks, God. Like I didn't need a reminder of what life feels like right now. And now there's crap falling on me from heaven, okay? It's like, and now it's a little bit humorous, but I'm telling you, on NFL kickoff day, it was not very funny at all to me, And so I've been asking God, like I said, talking to my staff, talking to my board, why keep doing this thing? I'm feeling better now physically, which is tremendous. But one of the decisions I made, and I can't decide if this is because I've sold out and I've given up. I promise it's not giving up what it sounds like giving up. But I just decided I was going to stop counting attendance. I know that may not seem like a big deal, but I don't. So somebody wants to say, what have the attendance numbers been since August 20th? I can't tell you. I don't know. I have no idea. And so and in prayer, I kept saying, God, what do I do? How do I move forward? And I kept feeling like God was saying, stop counting people, which is totally runs contrary to everything that church planters are programmed to do. And it feels like a surrender. It feels like a giving up. It feels like a failure to stop counting. But here's what I found out. On the week after that date where we had 122 people, but that counted the choir that we brought in, so it really wasn't 122. You see what it does to your brain. The next week, I have no idea what the attendance was, and I felt great about what happened in here. And the week after that, I don't know. I have no idea. Don't care. Somebody says, what are your numbers at your church? Which always means, how much of a kick-butt pastor are you in church planting circles? I'm like, I don't know. And I really don't care. Here's what I know is I met Lee last week, and Lee broke my heart. I met Mike Hennessy, who I had lunch with this week, who's new to the church and wants to get involved and is looking for opportunities. And I had an incredible experience at Kristen Johnson's table Friday night, and it just beautiful people-involved stuff that has nothing to do with this idol that I created in my life. And so maybe you guys would probably even have no clue that this was ever going on in my life, but I apologize publicly, openly to God and to everyone about how important those numbers were to me, which is just really ridiculous. And so I've given up on numbers and started thinking about people, and that's what we're going to talk about today, like people like Crystal Farmer who's been coming. Is Crystal here today? Hi, Crystal. So Crystal wrote in, because I asked you guys to write in, and like 9 of you did, so thanks for that. But I'm kidding. Some of you actually wrote in at the end, and I didn't have time to put you in the presentation, so if your mug isn't up there, that's why. Crystal says, with all the great friends I've made at Daylight, it's like I've been, and I love this line, it's like I've been able to meet all the different faces of Jesus. It's been really cool. Jesus keeps popping up in these quotes, which is so great. Because as a church planter, that's the real heart. That's the real mission, is that Jesus ends up at the forefront. Vicki and Dennis says, Dennis and I are so happy to be at Daylight. We're thankful for the leadership and how our relationship with Jesus, again, our relationship with Jesus has deepened upon coming here. And these guys show up early and help us set up hospitality here and there. They're a part of that team. They've been a huge blessing to me. John and Brittany Shockley, you guys have been here for about a month now. I saw you guys come in, and you were wearing a Patriots jersey, so I kind of had to turn my head, and kind of offended me. But they said Daylight's given us a great start to building a community after our move. So they got Jordan Mitchell knocked on their door. Where's Jordan? He may have moved outside. Hey, good job on the bass today, by the way. Andrew has been teaching Jordan to play bass so that he can play up here. So everybody give Jordan a hand. And I guess Jordan must have knocked on their door because we have this thing called the New Movers program where we spy on people that move into the neighborhood. And we send, so Bill Clark is heading that now at this point. And so we need people to do that, but it just involves knocking on their door with a little package of nice gifts that we've arranged from local businesses. But they showed up as a result of that. And they said, it's new community after their move, and they felt at home in the Come As You Are atmosphere, and truly feel it's a great environment for people from every walk of life. So really thankful you guys are here. And these are the kind of things that I'm thankful for now. If I go home and Kara says, how do you think it went today? I'm going to say, John and Brittany were back. I'm really excited about them being there. And it's just a different thing for me. Here's some financial stuff, because I think I want to be transparent about our money all the time. If you have questions about our money, how we run things, the decisions we make, you're always welcome to come to me. We're an open book on all of it. But here's some just baseline statistics. This is where our baseline numbers. This is where we were as of September of last year. So last year at this time, in the year previously, we still had external support coming in who believed in us planting a church, and that amounted to about $45,000 of people who believe in Daylight Church that have nothing to do with Daylight Church and supported it financially. Now, with what came in with the text to give and the online giving and the offerings, that number was $163,000, and of that money, we gave away $22,000. So we consider the first part to be mission support, the second part to be our income, and we give off of that income. And we gave away about 13% of our income last year. Now, here, and I should have done this a long, long time ago. These are just some of the names of people, and I probably missed some people, and I'm terrified of hurting somebody's feelings. But these are some of the people, Paul and Denise Burt and Crossroads Bible Church and Eric and Elizabeth Schoberg. These are people that at least currently, or at least in the very recent past, have supported us regularly. So they might send a check for $100 a month or $400 a month or $1,500 a month in some cases. So these are people that you've never met. So Daylight Church is bigger than just what goes on in here on a Sunday morning. These are people who have supported us monthly. But this is our income over the last year. And you'll notice that the income from external sources has gone down by about 38%. I tried to call everybody. I may have missed a few. But we were self-sustaining after about 6 months of doing this thing, which is ridiculous. That just doesn't happen in the church planting world. So you guys are incredible as to what you do and your generosity. I know churches, they usually say 5 years is the benchmark. If you can be self-sustaining by the 5-year mark, you've done well. You guys have been incredible. And so I was able to call all of our external supporters within the first 6 months of doing Daylight. And I did. I called every one of them that I can think of. I may have missed some, but I tried. Definitely called our biggest supporters and said, stop sending us money. I said, you don't have to send any money anymore. You're welcome to, but we don't need it. And the majority of them said, I've never heard of anybody doing that. And said, because you did, I had a couple say, because you did that, we want to keep supporting you. And some said, well, we still believe in what you're doing and we want you to be able to do it well, so we want to continue to give. So most of the people on the list prior continue to give. But you'll notice that number is down 38%, but our internal giving is up 7.5%, which is really outstanding, especially considering, and I don't know what our numbers are, but our numbers are about even or slightly declined from what they were this time last year. So for our income to go up, while our attendance stays level or even goes down, really shows us a depth of commitment and that people believe in what's going on or are involved. And so whatever the numbers are, and I'm to the point where I barely care. I won't say I don't care, but I barely care. Whatever the numbers are, we have a greater percentage of people who really are in to what we're doing. And then finally, and my bad on this, we gave away 53% more money this year. I want to give away about between 15 and 18%, and we accidentally gave away almost 20% of our money this year. We try to, whenever possible, if missionaries come, if people with benevolence needs comes, if we have humanitarian service opportunities, we believe in humanitarian service. We believe in missions and outreach. And so when opportunities come, we do our best to say yes. And so you guys have given away $34,000 to places that really matter. Here's a list of some of the places we've given. Missionaries in Wales, we partner with an organization that builds orphanages and schools all over the world. Missionaries in South Korea, a second missionary in Wales, and so forth. We partner with an organization that gives away literature and Bibles in foreign languages all over the planet. Thailand. You see LGBT plus up there, and some of you are comfortable with that and some of you aren't. That's an organization that works to restore LGBT individuals to their families who have cast them out. And it gives conservative Christians a better worldview on loving and embracing the LGBT community in a Christ-honoring way. And so we partner with some organizations in that area. We just picked up a missionary to Croatia. We have ministers in Peru, in Egypt and North Africa, in areas where they can be, in certain areas where just talking about Jesus can lend to serious trouble. And the list goes on. China Missions, Hildegard House. Hildegard House is a palliative care ministry here in Louisville for the homeless that have no one. So they've been diagnosed with a fatal disease. They know they're only going to last a month. That's all the time they have left, and they're homeless. They have nothing. Hildegard House takes them in and allows them to die with dignity and honor with someone by their bedside. And so all these ministries, some of the Everyday Church is a church plant. In fact, I don't see Church of the Ville on there. It might have been on the last list somewhere. I don't know, but Church of the Ville is a ministry that we've sponsored monthly here in town. It's another church plant, and they're having their 1-year anniversary today. And so what we do in here, it does develop what we're doing in here, but to me, it's almost entirely about what happens in here going out there. And so we try to give away a good percentage of our money. We try to be involved on a personal level with a lot of people. Here's one of our missionaries, one that you'll know well.
Hey, Daylight. Say hi. Hi. Yeah, I'm Abby in Hong Kong. She's Kelly in Hong Kong, and Daylight Church has impacted my relationship with Jesus. It's just shown me more about who He is. It's helped me to grow closer to Him. And Jesus welcomes people in and always wanting people to join his family. And I feel like Daylight does a good job of that and making a home for people. It's done that for me, and I feel like I belong at Daylight, and I feel like you guys are my people, and I just, that's very encouraging, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, Daylight, for helping me to get closer to Jesus and for loving and supporting me.
You're making better human beings.
Good job, Daylight. Hey, here's Hong Kong. Pretty, huh? Come see us.
Yeah, anybody that would want to go see Abby in Hong Kong, I'm sure they could use the help. Just don't stay. We need you here or I'll lose my identity. So the ministry they're doing is to the red light district of Hong Kong. So they sleep in during the day and they go out late at night and work the red light district and take baked goods to the girls, the prostitutes that are there, many of whom are caught up in human trafficking. And they've gotten to know the pimps and the prostitutes as well. And they've created a home where girls that want out can get out. And they're working, they work a catering business, so girls who are supporting families back home through prostitution and feel trapped, now they have the potential for an occupation. And this is just one. That whole list I showed you, we could go down and show all of these, and they're just all really incredible ministries. And that's just a small taste of what we're doing. So when we first launched Daylight, one of the really neat things about starting a church as an individual is if you start a church and you cast a vision, you get to make that vision whatever you want it to be. So I sat down and thought, how have I always viewed church, and what would make a great church? And I wrote out a list of core values that's about, 18 things long. So even today, if you go on our website and click core values, there's about 18 or 20 things on there. And they're things like fearlessness, that we will move forward without fear and we'll try stuff without being afraid. And if stuff doesn't work, we'll try something else. And it was just ideas and thoughts that I had. But to me, that's too many, and I've been wanting to narrow it down. And I'm going to show you a list today of where I'm getting. This is not definitive. I haven't sat down with our board. I haven't sat down with the deacons and elders of the church and said, hey, what do you guys think about these? This is just where my brain's at today about. So that question of why do Daylight? Like, why put ourselves through this? Why should Chris Booker get up every Sunday morning and grind out setting up these cameras and putting the videos up and then going home every single Sunday afternoon and grinding out the few hours of labor of getting those videos up online? Which is huge. It's incredible. And I didn't put all the numbers up there because I'm just not focused on numbers this year, but we have probably twice as many people who watch what goes on as Daylight as attend. And so because of what he does, but why keep doing that? I mean, it's a lot of work we pay you $50, $75 a week. It's something ridiculous. He's worth 3 times what we pay him, 10 times what we pay him. Why keep doing it? Why set up the nursery? Why set up the kids? Why do the kids festival? Why? And I've come up with three things that I think definitively for me say why. What is it about Daylight? I don't want to say that makes us better than other churches or even special from other churches, but what is our identity that drives me forward and hopefully will drive you forward? And number one is that idea that we help. We're putting together an ad that's going to go out on social media where we talk about three signature things about Daylight, and one of them is that we help people who have a hard time helping themselves, like Hildegard House, supporting Hildegard House and people who are terminally ill and have no one. That to me is kind of the heart of who we are as a church. And we take the passage in Matthew 25, which is called the parable of the sheep and the goats, very seriously. Jesus seems to indicate that there's a line down the middle, and those who serve other people are different from those who don't serve other people, and that it's an important line, and it's a line that we're supposed to cross as a church. I very much appreciate this couple, Joseph and Molly Bond, and they have, from the very beginning, as soon as they got involved, taken their history and their background and their character and their talents and applied it to serving other people and helping other people. And he said this, he said, Daylight's provided me with many opportunities to serve my community in a variety of ways, which right there, this is a golden individual. That's his focus, is he wants to serve the community. Daylight's taught me the true meaning of grace and mercy while showing me what it means to be loved and to love like Jesus loves. Jesus shows up again. Thank you. And so I'm excited about Daylight Church, and kind of how we are on service projects. Lacey isn't with us today. Lacey is our communications leader, but she does such an incredible, unbelievable job in making sure everybody knows about what's going on, keeping the websites up, keeping the emails out there, touching base with people, organizing the missions trips. And I just looked over our calendar, so thanks to Bill DeGoey, you're the keeper of the calendar. He's the man with all the power in the entire church. If he wants to destroy us, he can with the touch of a finger. And sometimes when I hear him laugh, I'm afraid he might do that. But this is just a little bit, and this doesn't cover it all. This is just a little bit of what we've done in the last year. We had some groups, so we weren't doing our community groups as such this time last year. We had one called Third Person Prayer, a fun night for kids. Freedom Group continues to go on. And Joseph and Molly and some others continue to serve at Teen Challenge on a fairly regular basis. Teen Challenge is a drug recovery center over there. And I don't want to read the whole list, but there it is. This is what we do. Men in the Vault is a men's group that gets together once a week. We did a homeless coat drive that overflowed my truck with stuff that we gathered. We put on our Kids Fest. We served at Alex F. Kennedy, which is a school in transition here in town, and served them during their orientation. We did a 2-day conference on human trafficking and did outreach with them. Camp Crest, there's just so much that we did that it doesn't make sense to go down the list and talk about each one of them. We put on seminars. We invited in experts on in certain areas, like health and nutrition. We brought in Brandon Millay, Kyle Whitaker, who's getting his doctorate in philosophy, came in and talked about Christians and education. Alec McClellan, the apologist, came in and talked to us about finding our worldview and so forth. We're involved with Run Possible at St. Jude's. A trickling of people are here and there, which is another drug recovery center in town. Site 61 is a ministry in an impoverished area here in town where we serve, and Matt and Amanda Chalmers have done an incredible job, and the McRaes who are now gone for 2 months. Every single week they go serve the homeless, and not the homeless, but the impoverished in the Louisville area, preparing meals and serving meals. And this is exciting stuff. This goes way beyond a spreadsheet. It's one of my main goals when we started the church is that it would be a church dedicated to helping others, and it has become that, and that's a beautiful, incredible thing. The second potential core value is that we think. There's plenty of churches out there that will tell you what to think. I hope to be a church that will tell you how to think and help you develop good skills in logic and theology and so forth, and not try to force anything on you, but to teach you how to look at things honestly and sincerely and come to conclusions for yourself, which will tie into our third core value. But in Romans, it says that you're transformed by the renewing of your mind, and we believe that the mind, that it's okay to ask questions. That's the second thing in our commercial, is that Daylight Church is a place where no question is off the table. We're not afraid of questions in here. Hopefully, we're a thinking church that processes information, studies what we believe, and comes to conclusions about why we believe what we believe, and we're not afraid of that. It's very easy to be kind of a lemming that just follows the person in front of you where religion is concerned. And we want to discourage that and encourage people to dive into Scripture, to dive into history, dive into philosophy, and come to conclusions themselves. This is Adam Scott, and Adam is currently touring with Metallica as an engineer for their lights. He just took off about a month ago. But he says, I'm constantly in secular environments and confronted about my faith, and the sermons at Daylight, specifically about being a Christian and having a brain, those helped. And I summarized what he said after that. Those helped a lot. And so we want to equip people and help people understand why I believe. And over the last year, these are some of the topics we've talked about, is center set. And some of these you're like, what? It's because you listened one time and never did any more homework after that. But hopefully we at least encourage you to think about thinking. Centered set versus bounded set theology. We talked about health, rest, friendships, and education, our destiny and design. We talked about hell and disappointment and hang-ups and kind of the ugliness of some Christians. And we did a whole very offensive series on offense and conflict, which there is a direct correlation between our attendance in that series, if you'll notice. We talked about not being offended, and people went, I ain't going back there. But hopefully these are things that make you think. And we're going to continue to be that church. And we're going to continue. I got 3 questions last week, questions@daylightchurch.com. I'm going to continue to hammer this, and I want to use it. And we're talking, Booker and I talked this week about a video series based on questions@daylightchurch.com, and we have some ideas coming up. So don't be afraid of questioning here. And then number 3, and it took me a long time and the help of some friends to come up with what this third little word was, And what I really wanted to say is that we believe Jesus gets a hold of people and changes them. That's the major core value of what we do. Helping people become followers of Jesus is our mission statement. But we also want to let people do that at their own pace, a pace set between them and God, while they think through these issues and they learn to help others. And it happens on their timeline. I don't want to be a pastor that beats people up and twists people's arms and forces people to do anything or makes people feel bad about where they are in life. And somehow this concept of rest, to me, really ties into that, is that we trust God. We trust that God does stuff in people's lives, and that our part in that is a very small, kind of minuscule, unimportant part, ultimately. That really He's the one that's at work. So if you're here today and you feel a desire to get closer to Jesus, or even talking about Jesus makes you think about Him and a drive towards Him, my opinion is that has very little to do with what we're doing in here and a whole lot to do with the voice of God dealing with people on an individual level. And we're going to trust God that God continues to do that. And we're just not going to freak out about it. We're just not going to get bent out of shape and worry about people and feel like it's even our responsibility, because it's not. It's the responsibility of the Holy Spirit dealing with each individual. And so, Jesus said this in Matthew. He said, "Come to me, all who are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And that works for not only the person being ministered to, but the person ministering. That we will be a culture of rest. A culture, we have our staff meetings in hammocks every now and then. We're going to be a culture that just isn't tripped out and upset and tight-fisted all the time, but that just kind of lets God do what He does. And I know that's starting to sound really hippie. Like, dude, we're totally like a hammock culture at Daylight Church. And that's not what I mean. But I do mean that we realize that we can't do much, but God can do a whole lot. If there's any number that I'm excited about, it's this number. We baptized 14 people over this last year, and there's 14 people that for whatever reason decided they wanted to make a public profession of their new commitment to Jesus, whether that's something they've done before or whether it's something new to them. We had people that want to move forward in the relationship with God, which isn't to say that if you weren't baptized that you're not in that camp of being forward, but this is an outward expression of inward reality, and we're excited about it. Haley Brown is one of the people we baptized that can't make it to church very often. She says, "I'm beyond grateful for Daylight Church. It filled the void I had forever been longing for in my empty life without God. I craved more of Him, and Daylight gave that to me. As much as I want to be present every Sunday, my life defeats me of that, but there's no doubt about what an impact Daylight has had on my life. I love Daylight." We believe in transformation here, and so, Andrew wrote in and he said, "Before I came to Daylight, I felt like a total goof and I drooled a lot. But thanks to the teaching from the exceptionally handsome and funny pastor, now I'm huge." And you can see the transformation in his life. The Jeanette said at Daylight, "I love this. At Daylight, I felt welcomed, unconditionally. Something I've not felt in a long, long time, and I grew up in church." To me, that's the rest thing. That's come on in as you are. It's all good. Encounter Jesus and let Him do what He does. Ellen Wheeler, who you can find on her hands and knees scrubbing the rubber pads out in the nursery every single week if you wanted to come early. She does that, and we've never asked her to. She just shows up and serves. She said, "I received a postcard saying, 'Come to Daylight Church, a church for not-so-churchy people,' and it really got my attention. I went to the very first service, and I felt Jesus there. Jesus makes another appearance, yes. A few weeks later, I had lunch with H.L. and Abby, which showed me what real Christians are like." And I want to just say, please don't make me the de facto what a real Christian looks like, or Christianity is doomed. But she said, I have been at Daylight ever since. That's my typo. "I feel like I am closer to Jesus now because of everyone at Daylight." And that, is Ellen in here, or is she out? She's out working today, probably. Yeah. She probably spends 9 out of 10 days out in the nursery. But the first time I was ever around Ellen was at a lunch, and Abby said, "I'm going to lunch with Ellen Wheeler," and I'd met her a couple times. I said, "I really like Ellen. I'm going to go with you." So I invited myself to their lunch. And we showed up at the Ethiopian joint, Queen of Sheba, down on Taylorsville Road, and while we're sitting there, I don't know how to eat Ethiopian food, and there's this dude here at this other table that clearly knows what he's doing because he's tearing the bread up and dipping it in the sauces. And so I said, "How do you eat this stuff?" to him while I'm at lunch with this person that I've barely met, Ellen. And he starts telling me, and he has an accent, and so I said, "Well, come eat with us." And so he comes and he joins us. And it turns out he's from like the northernmost village in some Scandinavian country like Norway or Switzerland, but he was in town for some machine gun festival because he had heard he could fire machine guns in Kentucky. Yeehaw, right? And so I have this long conversation. He's fascinating, and Ellen is part of the conversation, but just kind of sits there. And afterwards, I feel like such a bonehead. Like I was there to meet Ellen, and instead I invited this dude over for lunch. But apparently Ellen, that just did something for her. Like the Holy Spirit, the thing we were talking about earlier, where what we do really, even if we're idiots and boneheads, God just has this tendency to do stuff. And Ellen said, I think Ellen would say that moment was important to her in her spiritual journey. And so I love Ellen Wheeler. There she is. These are the Rudolphs. And Lori, I didn't get yours until like last night, so yours isn't in here. But David's quote got in here. He said, "First I went from believing that Jesus was just another mortal man to believing Jesus is the man, the true Lord and Savior." He says, "Before I felt as I was carrying a dark, bitter, and heavy burden on my chest and on my shoulders. I guess I felt empty inside. Since I feel whole and filled with inner peace that I had never felt in my previous 40 years. And these guys, they started showing up to help us set up early, which automatically makes them superheroes in my book. They show up at 7:30 on Sunday mornings. And they have gone way above and beyond. They come in and they help us set up. So all the sound, all the lights, everything that gets set up, they play a huge part in. And when they can't make it, man, we notice at this point. But the other thing about them is that they look for stuff to do. I mean, it's really incredible. So our next table, we had a table that didn't quite fit the cover, and I said something out loud about it, and they heard me say it. So the next week, they show up with a perfectly fitting table for our next table. They noticed that one of my headlights was out on my truck, and one week while I was away at Pizza with the Pastor, they replaced the headlight. And so today I said, I hope that you hear the mysterious clicking in my engine and do something about that. But if we don't have popcorn, they go across the street and buy pastries and put them out for people. And I'm sure there's a whole lot more that they've done. And so today we presented them with a gift card for a nice meal at Jack Fry's just to say thank you for what you guys do. But as a church planter, they say look for people who come with their own batteries. And those guys come with their own batteries. So love you guys. Thank you very much. Bridget's here with us. Here you go.
I am Bridget. When I found Daylight, the day before they opened, I was at the lowest point of my life that a mom could ever be. I needed Daylight. And H and everyone else at this church have helped me to come away with a better attitude, more faith in Christ, and have helped me more than I can ever express in words. I love you guys. I appreciate and thank you all for your friendship.
Barbara Trigg is with us today, and I talked to Barbara just right before this. And when I first met Barbara, how do I say this? There was a difference between the first day that I met you and week 3 that I met you. And she said it like this. She said, Daylight Church brought me back to Jesus. Again, Jesus makes an appearance. Christ makes an appearance in Bridget's letter. In her video. Daylight brought me back to Jesus. The biggest, most important thing I've learned is that God never gives up on us. He's always there watching over us and loving us no matter what we do. And this line, this is it, folks. This is the line. I know this seems like it would be obvious, but it wasn't to me. To me, that last line is why do Daylight, is why keep doing Daylight, is because it's not obvious to people that there's a God that adores them and is sincerely interested in their lives and cares about every aspect and doesn't care about anything else. He's not freaked out about anything, but he is actively involved in people's lives and loves them and adores them. And because that's not obvious, we've done 3 years of Daylight, and here's to 30 more is how I view it. However we can make that obvious to people, that is worth doing church for. That's worth the setup and tear down. That's worth the finances. It's worth the stress. It's worth whatever it takes, is so that will be obvious to people that there is a loving God who cares about us no matter what we do and is watching over us.